Let's be clear about this. I love toads. So when I found our old one dying, washed into the drain by floodwater in the night, and then, if I can bring myself to say it, scolded by soapy lather I myself had let out of the sink, we suffered through it together. It was the summer of my father's death. I saw his spirit in every visiting creature, in every small thing at risk of harm, bird, moth, butterfly, beetle, the black rabbit lolloping along concrete, lost in suburbia, and our toad. If we'd seen it once a year, that was often, but the honor of being chosen by it puffed us up, a toad of our own, trusting us not to hurt it when we had to lift it out of its den to let the plumber get at the water main. And now this desperate damage, the squat compactness unhinged, made powerless, dark, straight, its legs extended, flippers paralyzed. It lay lengthwise, flabby skinned across my palm, cold and stiff as the devil's penis. I laid it on soil. The shoulders managed a few slow twitches, pulled it an inch forward, but the blowflies knew. They called it dead, and stippled its back with rays of curly stitching. Into the leaves with it then, poor toad, somewhere cool where I can't watch it. Perhaps it was very old. Perhaps it was ready. Small comfort through 10 guilt-ridden days. And then, one moist midnight, out in the country, a little shadow shaped like a brown leaf hopped out of greener leaves and came to me. Twice I had to lift it from my doorway. A gently throbbing handful, calm, comely, its feet tickling my palm like soft bees.
That was the poem Toads by Fleur Adcock, read to us by our guest today, Claudia Jardine. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, honestly, I'm barely even having you. You're on Zoom here. So, like, you're hosting yourself. You're just taking the time to talk to me on the internet. And I really appreciate it.
I could see you wearing earrings and a cool t-shirt. So I'm like, Cyrus puts effort into this too, But yes, here's to Zoom.
Here's to Zoom. I did put effort in. I did put these earrings on for the listeners. These are earrings by Color Kid on Instagram. She's very cool. These ones were custom made.
Love it.
Yeah, my friend Georgie was like, I heard you're having a bad time. Here, have some earrings.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, it was very sweet. But I do want to ask you why you chose that poem, because it's a bit of a ride, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, I chose it because I think I love the emotional range of the poem. I do love it. I don't think I love it. I love it because it's like an animal has randomly chosen this family, just happens to be living near it, and the family think it's a big deal. They're like, oh my god, like this toad has chosen us, and it lets it's chill when we pick it up and move it out of the den so that the plumber can get at the water main. Like there is this, quite one-sided, maybe. I don't know. I actually haven't read much about toad's capacity to love, but anyway, the family kind of project on the toad, right? And then, the voice of the poet, the poet's father has died, and so now they kind of like, it's like the toad is an outlet for the grief they're having about their father, and I just think it's so tragic that she accidentally kills it and feels, like quite cut up about it. And the description of the toad, with maggots coming out of it is quite intense, like pearly stitching. It makes me kind of like squirm, but also think of elaborate jewelry. And then like another toad appears. That's how I read the end of the poem anyway. And it's kind of full circle, If you wanted to overread it, you might say like grief comes to an end and the cycle of life renews. But like if you just want to really enjoy descriptions of toads and the way that they move and their weird little bodies, you can't really go past it.
Yeah. I feel like that's what I meant with It's a Ride. You've made it far more eloquent and detailed, but like it's got this like visceral disgust almost kind of, but at the same time this like beauty and like I don't want to say hopefulness, but like I feel like the end's a little bit like optimistic nihilism, if I can say so. Like, you know, like just like, and it goes on, you know, like
Yeah.
yeah.
I like the fact that like the new toad keeps on like trying to come into the house, and they're like, no, like we have a boundary, you know, like toads are out there, you know, like we like you, but not that much, you know. Yeah, but I kind of get it because I feel like I look for signs in nature all the time, you know, and it's not that I'm like, you know, dying to imbue them with meaning all the time, but like when you are in an optimistic mood and you see something happening in the natural world outside your door that seems to mirror your mood, you can't help but sort of feel like you're all on the same team, you know. And so it's sort of like she sort of accepts she accepts accidentally killing the other toad and her father's death, and then like can see this like new toad as like a sign of like a positive change.
Yeah, I feel like that sort of looking at the natural world and imbuing it with meaning is like maybe that's what a poet is. Because I mean, like I remember when I was a kid, my mum used to do that a lot. Like she'd like take all sorts of natural phenomena that I like totally took for granted as a child and like imbue it with like quite spiritual meaning because she's like Christian as well. And I was like, Mum, you're reading way too much into this. Like it is just a full moon. Like, what do you mean? And then like because I didn't really start writing poetry until like my 20s. But now I look at my writing and I'm like, oh my God, it's my mum's writing. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And now like we hang out and do that together. Like she's got a pet owl and we like just
What?
yeah. Yeah. She wouldn't call it a pet. But she can because it still lives outside, but she can go outside in the nighttime and call the owl and it comes. And I'm like, that's a pet.
That's so hardcore. Your mum sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Oh.
she wouldn't want to hear this, but she's basically a witch. So
Is it a ruru?
yeah.
Is that what I'm getting?
It's
Yeah.
a rudu.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
But yeah, like this whole idea of imbuing quite sort of mundane natural things with a lot of meaning. I feel like that's what being a poet is.
Totally.
You
It's
know?
like it's a language of symbols, right? And it's interesting about what you say about your mother's faith because Christianity has like a huge directory of animals as symbols. You know, like I was in my early 20s when I learned that the pelican means something to Christians that I didn't know it meant to Christians.
Do you remember
And
what it meant?
I've forgotten it now, but I saw it on a
Okay.
crest somewhere, and I was like, "Why is
Anybody
there
who's out
pelican?"
there listening to this and isn't driving, Google immediately
Yeah,
pelicans and Christianity.
absolutely. I think, you know, from memory, it made me feel good, but I can't remember what it is. I just really like
Interesting.
pelicans as well, so I was yeah.
I feel like I could imbue pelicans with meaning, except it feels like it would be negative for me. Something like greed or something, you know, like.
Have you met a pelican yet?
No.
Okay, so this is the thing, right? I think I was like you, right? I was like you, and I was so willing to think, you know, pelicans, they're big, they got a big like pouchy beak, like that's got to be something about like storing resources and greed and gluttony. And then I met one, and it was incredible. Like that was a as far as moments in my life go, like that pelican meeting has to be top 50. You know, I never thought I would pat a pelican's head, and then I did it, and I was like, wow, my life's changed. You know, and
Oh my God.
she was incredible. They named her Elizabeth, which I just think is fantastic. And like initially, I was just like, why is this pelican watching all of us so intently? It was, for context, it was like a bird of prey centre in England. And so they have all these birds of prey, like owls, falcons, eagles, kestrels, like you name it. And then this pelican in her own enclosure. And her name is Elizabeth. And I was like, okay, this is some sort of like mascot situation, like someone just kind of said, hey, look, we've got this rescue pelican. Can we give it to you guys? You look after birds. Like, you can deal with the pelican. And they were like, oh, yeah, sure. And then, like, all of the hardcore falconers, bird of prey expert people ended up falling in love with this pelican because she's just so chill and really good eyesight. So they were doing, like, bird of prey displays, and all the bird, they set off, like, a falcon and, throw some food in the air, and it catches it, and it's, real cool. And you're like, wow, birds of prey. And then they flicked pieces of meat to Elizabeth from, like 10 meters away, like little tiny bits, and every time she caught them.
Wow.
Yeah.
A real precision bird would not have taken a pelican as a precision bird.
Yeah, right? Because I think it's just they look a bit sort of ungainly, right? And they're kind of flat-footed and stuff. Yeah, but they have really good eyesight. And yeah,
That's
she was very
incredible.
sweet. Yeah.
That's
Go
incredible.
Elizabeth. I hope she's well.
I feel like you've really changed my mind on pelicans.
All I'm saying is be open to it, like
Okay.
be open to liking pelicans.
So you mentioned about knowing about Christianity's symbols, finding out about the symbolism of animals in Christianity. Where did you find this out? Was this part of your studies?
No, it wasn't. Oh, a little bit, but like, I mean, I did forget what the pelican means in Christian symbology, so
I mean, details of study, like,
yeah.
Would I be able to tell you the details of like the conflict between the USA and China in the 1990s? No, I would not.
Precisely. Christianity came into my studies a little bit in my master's qualification because I moved from like classical history into Byzantine history, and Byzantium was a Christian empire for part of its time anyway. And yeah, I had to learn a lot about Christianity quite quickly, just in a sort of like socio-political way, not so much with regard to its tenets of faith. Yeah, I had to learn about like why the Roman Empire split in half, and the big meetings that caused that. I like the fact that there were just several big meetings, and then that just ended up carving big chunks of the central Mediterranean.
Love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there are other ones, there's like fish and eagles and like for some reason giraffe is on the tip of my tongue, but I actually don't think that's applicable right now. I can't think of why Christian scholars would write about giraffes. But anyway, a deep dive.
I love that. I'm gonna have to look it up later on. But I want to talk more about your studies, because like you're clearly a like classics / history nerd. Can you tell me a little bit about like what sucks you into that? Because it's one of those things that like I wish I knew more about. And I feel like I know like little bits and bobs, enough to like sort of like get references, but also not enough to be like fully deep dive into it,
I think I excelled as a classics student at university because I love reading, and there is so much to read from that period. I mean, when I say classics, I mean ancient Greece and Rome, and like, we all know now there's a lot more to that part of the world at that time. There were many other cultures. It's just that so much written material from Italy and Greece and the areas they colonized survives. So, I just read and read and read for years. I read myself short-sighted. Like my eyes were fine, and then I did a Bachelor of Arts and some honors, and then I needed glasses. So now, like, I don't know, 2 years after I stopped studying, my prescriptions changed like every 3 months quite regularly, kind of going back to 2020, which is nice.
Wow.
Yeah. I think so. The big draw for me for my like interest in the classical world is that like I'm a descendant of people who are from the central Mediterranean, so it's very much like our history. My mum's Maltese. Her family lived in Malta for generations and generations and generations. And Malta is, one of these fascinating areas where, like, yes, it was colonized by the Roman Empire. It was taken over by the Ottoman Empire. It was, essentially colonized by the British. It's gone back and forth for decades and centuries. But pre all of that, it had its own, Neolithic culture of like quite intense, what seems to be, well, there are like these massive temples in Malta made from stones, like the kind of thing where it's like that stone's probably too big for one person to move, like big stones, and they seem to like this classic middle Mediterranean kind of popular myth. They seem to have worshipped some sort of like matrilineal, no, not matrilineal. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. They seem to have had like a cult of like woman worship or like feminine figures. That was the vibe. And like some people have gone on to say that about cultures in the Mediterranean and overemphasized it to like extreme degrees. You come across Robert Graves in your reading of classical mythology. He's a great one. Oh, this is an interesting example. He's a great one for like, I want to learn some more about myths, like I want to learn some more myths from the classical world. Read some Robert Graves, but like don't take his scholarship particularly seriously. That's probably my like word of warning to any kind of like would-be classical scholars out there.
Scholarship in bunny ears for those who are
Yeah,
listening.
yeah. He had some reckons, and he was like, you know what? I reckon that there were lots of these like triadic matrilineal cults out there in the Mediterranean world, and I'm gonna be very selective about my evidence, and I'm gonna write books about it. Cool. And everyone was like, great, Robert Graves, yeah.
Just the audacity of a scholarly man.
Honestly, that's it. White scholar man had some reckons and published several books on it, and everyone thought he was a big deal. And like, I'll be like, I'm a really big fan of his memoir and his poetry. I think he's very funny, but like, yeah, I can't rate him as a scholar. Sorry, Robert. I know you're dead, but yeah. Anyway,
that's great.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And
part of the draw card was your lineage and finding out about that stuff as well. Was that part of the draw card for you?
Yeah, it was. And I mean, like, in the modern world, there are things I could be doing. Like, I would love to learn Maltese. I'd love to spend more time there. But it's just like a bit in the too hard basket at the moment, anyway. Although I hope to be making some progress with learning Maltese. So, yeah.
Is it on Duolingo?
I think it might be. Like, I haven't actually checked, but I'm pretty sure it is. I think it's also just like a hard language. But I mean, if I can pick up Latin and ancient Greek, I'll probably give it a crack. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to learn more about my ancestors essentially, and I felt like an interest in the narratives and the stories, and I just thought, yeah, like I'll study classics. I did it at high school and then continued on, and at uni I picked up Latin and then I picked up ancient Greek and just kind of went with it from there.
Cool, that's rad.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk a little bit about Biter? Because like for me, when I looked at it, I was like, this. Immediately, I was just like, this is a classics geek. Like that's the first thing I knew, and I didn't like really know that about you before I looked at it, and I was just like, oh yeah, cool, man, classics geek. So like, how have those realms for you, like, has poetry and your writing always been intertwined with your like studies and your academic world, or is that something that's like collided more recently?
Well, it's hard to like separate that out, right? Because I just feel like I'm a person who's got interests, and inevitably I write poetry about my interests.
Sure.
So like, yeah, like cracked on with this massive kind of like this massive schedule of academic study and like classical scholarship. But then I also like love tramping and like birds, but I didn't like I didn't really study any of those things. And I think I still write about them, but maybe not with the same intensity. Like every now and again I do feel drawn to a certain agenda, I'll say, or something like that. Like I find a cool text and I'm like, oh, there aren't many translations of this around. Like I'll give it a go. What can I bring to it? How can I reshape, translate, transform this text into something that contemporary audiences will understand and will kind of get and feel? Because there are, you know, some areas of classical literature have been translated, you know, bajillion times, you know, your classic canonical Iliads and Odysseys and that kind of thing. And then some others, you know, they're just either, on the one hand, there are not many writers who are women whose work has survived, and then there are even fewer scholars who feel compelled to or drawn to study them. And then it's like the resources are harder to get. Because I mean, if you've done any postgraduate study, you know that like some fields there is so much literature out there, and you go to write your, you know, your text review part of your thesis, and you have so much material. But I found often that when I looked into like for instance, my like master's thesis was on the Alexiad, which is like the earliest history written by women that we have surviving. And then when I was in honors, I started translating Sulpicia poems, and again, like she's an early Roman love poet who only has like 6 poems that have survived. There just isn't that much literature out there about it. And I guess when I find that out, I'm more interested. I'm like, why isn't there literature? Like, why can't I find out about this? So like big classics geek, but also like detectives, I think sometimes too.
Yes. Great. Great. And how do you feel that influenced your writing of Biter? Which is, by the way, like for listeners, Biter is Claudia's book that's coming out. Book of poetry. Published by AUP. Yes, she's holding it up for me on screen right now.
Because I sent you a PDF and I was like, Sarah.
Yes, it's beautiful. It looks beautiful when it. I mean, it looked beautiful on the PDF. But everything looks better in real life.
I reckon it's quite a trip. Sorry, what was the question? How did it influence writing Biter?
Yeah, that feeling of being like a classics geek, a detective, and also a writer of poetry. How did those things come together for you for Biter?
Well, it was a bit of a happy accident. Like I applied for this residency in Christchurch in 2021, and I pitched this idea of doing like a prose poetry essay project on loom weights in the ancient world, which was in my honors. I did a paper on it when I was an honors student, because like loom weights are these objects that are found in heaps of archaeological sites, but not much scholarship has been dedicated to them because of patriarchal views. Ultimately, like this is a thing that women used on the daily. There are heaps of them. Whatever, I would rather look at this inscription, you know. And so there's all these loom weights found all throughout the ancient world, and people just
can you say what they're called again?
Loom weights.
Loom weights. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, loom weights. Yeah, for horizontal,
holding down. Yeah.
Vertical warp weighted looms. Yeah. So yeah, I was kind of do that project, and that essay was like quite a lot about I mean identity and history and family stuff that I think maybe like I'm not exactly ready, maybe nor is my mom exactly ready for me to go like digging into. It's just the kind of nature of being like from like I guess an immigrant background. You know, when you go digging into those areas, you have to be really careful. And I just felt like although it was really like I was really drawn to it, not yet. But while I was on this residency, I was kind of like, you know, researching and reading a lot. And it was also early days for a new relationship. This boyfriend who I share this bedroom with now. I made him a zine. I made him a zine of translations of these epigrams, right, from the Palatine Anthology. Palatine Anthology is this like ancient, well, it's not even ancient, it's like maybe just like I would say like pre-medieval. Some of the writers are probably from 300 BCE, but like some of them are from like 600 CE. You know, there's this big range. It's just that at some point somebody put loads of poems from across several centuries together, and we're like, this is the manuscript, this is the Palatine anthology, and we're going to put it in this library. And then, it turns out when we study it, and we're like, cool, we know this is from a broad span of time, but it's called the Palatine anthology. Where was I going with this? Yeah, and I came across this during one of his research on Pickies and Latin love poetry, because actually the example that I found is where the title of the book comes from. There is the poet is talking about different styles of kissing, and he's like, one person kisses really lovely and soft, and someone's a biter. And I was like, oh, great, here we go, we're talking about Pickies, and I didn't end up using it in my thesis because I had to narrow my range, but I remembered it, and I thought, great, it's a cool note. There's this big pile of poems out there that I can look at one day. And so, like, I wanted to do something cute for my boyfriend. I translated some love poems and made a little zine, and then I read them and at a reading, and people were really into it, and I was like, okay, like maybe we're on something here. And so I've been writing other stuff too. There's sort of contemporary lyric and, a few other bits of like playing around with other forms. And I realized that the epigrams made like a nice kind of like spine for the structure thematically. And I went from there. Initially the book was in sections and all the epigram translations were together, but I felt like it was very arbitrary division. And I was like, actually it feels more real to like put them where I feel they kind of breathe, and where they can kind of, the sort of highs and lows, because nothing's ever like perfect 100% all the way through. There are always moments of frustration and things like that. As the relationship's played its course, I think the epigrams like just kind of neatly mirrored or had things in common with other poems I've written. Yeah.
Nice. I love that. So one of my favorite poems in Biter was My Iron Cervix.
What are your favorite ones? Okay, yeah.
What is that bad? I really liked it for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a pantoum, and I only like, because I didn't have much like formal training in writing poetry. Like I mainly just like learnt from being an English teacher, and then learnt from friends, and then learnt from reading, and then like workshops, and like just like on the way. And I learnt to write a pantoum with Carrie Radzinski. She was a guest teacher, I guess, that was taking one of Dominic Hoey's classes when we had like a weekly writing class for a while with him. And it was just a lot of fun. And then during lockdown, I like taught some of my friends to write pantoums, and we'd write pantoums together. It was always like quite sort of like fun and silly, because like it's such a like form poems are always ones that you can just kind of like play around with. Like once you learn the structure, you can just like put whatever you want in it.
Yeah.
And so like I haven't seen that many pantoums published in like recent, especially like New Zealand poetry spaces. Personally, I don't know, maybe I haven't been looking out for them as much, but this one I was like, oh my god, it's a pantoum. I was really excited by that. And also I have an IUD which I love to hate and hate to love.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I made a zine about IUDs a few years ago, and collected some stories from people about their experiences of like getting them and having them taken out again, and like issues and not issues, and like just all of those things. So that's why it's my favorite.
And I laughed because like I've had the experience of people after readings coming up to me and being like, I love that IUD, I love that My Cervix poem, like what's that about? And like realizing that they actually don't know what the poem is actually about. They just kind of think it's like a fun rhyming poem. Does that make sense? Yeah. They're like, oh cool. your cervix, that's a bit, ooh, avant-garde, but love the rhymes, but they don't actually kind of like know about the procedure, I guess, is what
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, like, tell me about like your writing of that poem, and like, I don't know if you want to share anything about the experience that led to writing that poem. You can. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about talking about my own IUD, but I'm not gonna force you to talk
No,
about your experience.
that's very respectful of you. Yeah, it as in to ask me if I'm cool with it, because I mean, yeah, it's personal, right? Totally. But like for me, I wrote that poem a while ago now. I was in creative writing undergraduate class at Vic, the IML, and I think we must have done a workshop or a day on form poems, and I found out about pantoums. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head of other New Zealand poets who've written them, and I can't think of one right now, but I'm sure there are some. I've like,
Surely.
yeah, Harry Ricketts comes to mind because I know that he likes to play around with form, but I couldn't tell you the name of one. Anyway, I wrote that poem about my first experience of a doctor attempting to insert a marina at student health at Victoria University, and I was, it was 2015, and it was awful.
Yeah.
And I guess I wanted to reclaim how awful that experience was, and like, I mean, I'm the kind of person that like likes to laugh and likes to make a joke and black humor. I'm into that kind of thing. I think even when shit's pretty dire, you can usually have a laugh. Um, anyway, I tried to do that with this poem, and I workshopped it, and just yeah, I'm quite happy with where it sits now. It feels a bit like juvenilia, like things I wrote when I was kind of like sort of young and trying to find my voice, find my way. But at the same time, it's one of the poems that like that people connect with a lot, especially people who've had that experience, because it's so unfair that it's so common to have a really bad time having an IUD insertion. And I think this is my kind of little middle finger to Western medicine's inability to accept and understand women's pain.
Yeah.
And I'm still not, I don't have an IUD anymore. I went through 5 IUDs. It wasn't the thing for me, and for the first time since I was 18, I'm not on birth control, and it's weird. It's a different life. Like even the Marina IUD, which is like a local release of estrogen, was still too much estrogen for me. It just in the last year or two, it just really started to trip me out, and I was like, "What's happening? This is cyclical. Why am I feeling so unhinged, like on this regular pattern basis? Oh, it's probably something to do with my cycle. Let's take the IUD out." And things have been much better since it's been gone. So I feel conflicted about it. Like on the one hand, it was several years of stress-free, safe sex, and it was all good. But then it just obviously reached a point where it was not all good anymore. And like I'm grateful to have a good doctor now who like listens and understands. But for years, I felt like I was just being passed around. So that poem is for me is like a little, it's that pressurized, that little diamond of pain, I think, after like lots of really confusing, hard feelings and weird conversations and moments where I felt like things were so clear from my point of view, and why couldn't people empathize with me? But they couldn't for whatever reason. So
Yeah. I feel that
yeah.
hard. My IUD is a copper IUD because
Oof.
I was on Depo-Provera for a number of years. That was horrible. The actual worst. But yeah, like the experience of getting it insert, like it was probably one of the worst experiences ever, like one of the most painful things I ever experienced when I got my first one put in. The second one was still awful, but not quite as bad, but still horrific. And I remember going after my first one, going for like the checkup with the nurse, and the nurse didn't know me, and like whatever, like we didn't really have any kind of like connection. She wasn't the one who inserted it either. And I was like, It's quite horrible, eh? Like, it's quite a terrible. And she's like, some people experience mild discomfort. And I was like, girl,
Mild. Oh my God. Let's talk
what
about
do
the
you
definition
mean?
of mild.
Yeah, and I just felt so like my pain was just like swept away with those like words. Like it was just like mild discomfort, I was like,
Hmm.
what do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah.
I felt like
No, yeah.
gaslit?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can still
So
remember the day. Yeah, the day my first IUD was a copper one, and that day when they put it in was, whoa, like that. Yeah, awful, awful pain. Couldn't
yeah,
believe it. And I slept for like 2 days afterwards. It was like like a trauma nap.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Your body just gets completely pumped with adrenaline. Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Mm,
it's awful.
mm.
I mean, like, I'm very happy with mine now that it's in, but I dread the next time I have to get it replaced. So yeah,
Um, power to you.
thank
I
you.
mean, I don't know what to tell you, to be honest. But like, I think we both know like how it's like the most twisted trade, right?
Yeah.
Like why should we have to trade like so much pain for this other thing? And it's like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty awful.
Mm.
What would you say is your favorite poem in Baita?
No one's ever asked me that.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm thinking now. Yeah, interesting. My favorite poem is probably Good Love, the translation
Hmm.
about yeah. Should I read it? Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, of course, if you want to. Love that.
Okay, Good Love, page 14. You giggle. You act like a horse trying to officiate a wedding. You nod to me wordlessly. You do all you can to titillate at random. Yet I swore an oath. 3 times I cast my vote, never to look with kind eyes on the stones of your heart. Practice kissing on your own. Lick your lips without reason. Pout naked, entwined with no one. I go another way. There are other, better companions in good love's occupation.
So good. So good.
Yeah,
What do you love about it?
I translating it was such a riot. Like when I got to the line that I have translated as "You act like a horse trying to officiate a wedding," I was just like, "What is going on? What did this person see? How do they? I can't remember the Greek off the top of my head. I need to go and have another. Need to revise it. But that I trust past me's judgment, and that's the line I got to. So it must have been for a really good reason. But I also like the image of like this sort of this poetic voice who's just sort of very fed up, like and the thing of like pout naked, entwined with no one, it's such a burn. Um,
Mm,
yeah, and I like the way it ends too. I go another way. It's like
so
whatever.
good.
Yeah,
Sassy as fuck.
yeah, sassy as fuck. Yeah,
So
and I mean
good.
that to me is my favorite, but I mean I don't think it's the best poem, but
Mm,
yeah, it's a fave. It's a fave for
it's
sure.
great. It's so
They're
good.
all my favorites, really. I
Yeah,
love the book. I don't think I don't know if I've heard people say that about their own books, but I'm a big fan.
you
Um,
definitely should. You should be able to say it about your own book. For sure. For
yeah,
sure.
it's a lot of fun. I think it's a lot of fun. Mm.
You mentioned that that it's your headset's good for teaching. Do you teach in some format?
Yeah, I'm the teaching assistant for a paper at UC that Vana Manasiadis is teaching. It's called English 118, but it's actually creative writing. And it's like a semester, and the purpose of the paper is to get students like having a go at writing poetry and short fiction and learning how to um, critique it constructively. So
Mm,
the tutorials that I teach are essentially workshops where all the students like come and we do a poem together and kind of look at techniques and a bit of prosody and analyze it, and then they split off into groups and workshop their creative writing for the last week. So it's pretty chill.
Because I used to be an English teacher at high school.
Yeah, I picked that up.
Great. From listening to the podcast, or just from
Yeah.
like who I am as a person?
Well, the Keith Harry t-shirt might be like a bit of an English teacher thing, I think. Right?
Yeah, depends what
Yeah.
school you're at, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And something that I found really interesting when I did workshops, which is like poetry workshop, just like with other adults, just like, oh, someone's putting on a random workshop, let's go to that. Is that like so often the facilitator will be like, okay, like do this activity and we'll write some stuff, and then like, okay, it's time to share, and then people will share their poetry, and then the facilitator will just be like, so what did everyone think of that? And the only thing people will say is like, oh, that was really good. And it's like, I get it, because everybody like wants it to be a like nice supportive environment, but it's like, man, it is a skill to learn how to tell someone like something constructive about their poetry, like give them actual like useful critique, not be like dragging it through the mud, but something that's not necessarily just like, that was fantastic. Because it's like, by and large, unless it's literally just like a feel good sharing session, by and large that feedback is usually like useless. Like, cool.
And
what am I supposed to do with that?
It's also just about like helping the students figure out what they like about writing, because loads of them are big readers, and like some of them like love writing and are doing the paper because they want to get better at writing, but so often they can't really like articulate what it is they like about something. They're just like, oh, it's really awesome. I'm like, okay, is it the sound, is it the imagery, like is it the story? And then they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, so this is kind of like the thing, right? When you can get a bit particular about what it is that you like, and then you can connect more quickly. You can connect more like deeply with work, I think.
Yeah, in a way that's more like meaningful.
Yeah, it's a really interesting paper to teach, because I feel like I'm always in like this mildly like this space where I'm exploring the ethics about writing and about feedback and about reading, because I'm always like, well, the point is not to make them like good writers, it's to just help them explore writing, and then it's like not to make them critics, but it's to like help them specify what it is they like about writing, so they can then form like they can form opinions, and like, I don't know, there's just something about this specifics that I get kind of like a bit knotted about it, because I'm like, it's not like a meritocracy. The paper's not about who's the best writer. It's just about like how well you can engage with work, and be open to it, I think.
They do have to give feedback to each other's writing, right?
Yeah, like I have my pile of marking for me tomorrow is a small assignment on writing feedback for another student's poem. So this first assignment for the paper is not judging, it's not assessing their writing, it's assessing their writing on someone else's writing.
Wow.
Which I think is a nice step, because for lots of these students, they've never written poetry before. Like maybe they did a little bit of it at school, but like not in the sense of like, now please write a sonnet, or now please write a haiku, or something like that. Yeah.
What are you noticing across, this is such a teacher question to ask, but what are you noticing across your cohort, like in terms of, because it's the first time that they've had to do something like this, both for the poets and for the critics, I guess we could call them, the feedbackers. What are you noticing in terms of like what they're saying? Where are like the big gaps in their language, or in their confidence maybe as well, or like do you find that, I think what I'm trying to say is, are they still being too nice, or
Well, so what I think is good, like an observation I've made of the current cohort that I think is positive, is that they are very gentle with each other, especially when, like, for some people who haven't written much poetry, the thing they want to write about first is often like quite important to them or quite intense, and so students write about, significant life events because they think, I've got to write about something with emotion. It has to have a story-ish, something has to have happened. And so they pick these kind of big life events, and then their fellow students are very gentle with them. And on the one hand, that's them saying, thank you for sharing. This is really brave of you. And also, this was really nice. I loved it. And so, like, in my role as tutor, I kind of hover around these workshop groups, and I'm like, okay, so we've ascertained that we all like this poem, but can you tell me why? What about it? And for lots of people, it is the content. They feel like they relate emotionally to other people's, life stories, and that's human, right? That's totally us. And for some people, it's I guess it's that they can see another student trying to figure out how to do this paper, like how to be a writer, how to be a poet. And they immediately kind of team together. They want everyone in the they want each other to succeed, I think is what I'm trying to say. And I think that's great. They want to bring out the best in each other. That gives me like a lot of warm fuzzies.
How do you encourage them to then give constructive feedback? Like when it gets to the point where they have to say, like, this was great, but like maybe you could try doing this. Like, how do you bridge that gap? And like,
so there are a couple of like sort of low-hanging fruit that I'll go for because I think they're quite tangible asks, and like often it's like, can you tell me a passage of sound in this poem that you liked, the sound of the words. And some students are, more orally inclined, and they'll really jump on that. They'll be like, the way that this bit like has lots of L's or lots of G's and R's, it felt like very smooth. And I'm like, okay, great, or this bit has got lots of consonants and hard sounds and K's and T's and, and S's. And they're like, yeah, we're into this kind of like punchiness of that kind of sound. So there's the sound one. The next one is line breaks. Like when I was a student, one of my mentors told me, like always be careful, like be conscious about where you end your lines. Like what are you ending your line on? Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it something concrete? Is it something vivid? Or is it, a conjunction or a joining word? Like is it, and, but, when, if, because when you're reading that aloud, you're not stressing, for the most part, unless you're trying to do something very clever with meter, you're not going to stress those sorts of words. So like the next one along that I'll suggest to students is, okay, let's have another look at the line endings in this poem. And it's all so easy to adjust, right? The student then just kind of looks at their poem and they're like, oh, and then, if I just enter the line there instead and there instead and there instead, and I'm like, yeah, perfect. Now we're cooking with fire, Is it cooking with fire? Cooking with gas. Now we're cooking with gas. Yeah. And
I don't know.
I feel
like fire works better with storytelling.
Yeah, because you want that, especially with students who are trying it out. That's the thing. I often want them to start their work with what they mean. Like just get their intent out there from the get-go. But that is so just not the way. They are so much more careful because they want to do a good job. And I think it's something that will come with a bit more confidence. And the other thing that like I tend to ask about is, like, oh, you like this poem? Can you tell me an image that you like? Because images, some people are very visual in their imagination. They can say like, oh yeah, these colors, that movement. Yeah. That's kind of how I get them started on being specific about what they like about stuff. Yeah.
And then it also opens it up to being able to like try new things as well. Like once you get into specifics, you can it's much easier to give, not just easier, but also more useful. It's less cruel to give very specific critical or like constructive feedback than something that's vague.
Yeah.
Because then it just turns into sort of like, I didn't like it,
And also when you're specific about your feedback, it also gives the person your feedback the right to say, well, that's your subjective opinion, and I actually disagree.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you think this thing should have moved in that way. Well, actually, that's not how I want to do it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not until sometimes we're challenged about those things that we realize we feel strongly about them.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
100%. That's cool. That's really rad. Something that I did want to talk about before I let you share another one of your poems, if you want to, is, I guess, and this comes up a lot on this podcast and also just in discussions between poets all the time, and some people are really bored of the discussion, but I'm not over it. And also, like,
Go on.
non-poets are always like, they're like, oh yeah, I'd never really thought about that before. Is, I guess, this conversation between like written and spoken poetry, because I very much come from like a performance poetry background. And the first time I really interacted with your poetry, I'd seen your poetry around before, but the first time I like really engaged with it was when I saw you perform last year. And so like
At the slam finals?
At the slam finals, yeah. So I was like, whoa. Then to like read more about you and be like, oh my gosh, she's got so much stuff like published, and she's a real written poet. I was like, this is like making me this is an odd reaction to have for me. I don't know. So I guess what I'm interested in for you is like what your experience is in terms of having your poems on the page and taking them to the stage.
Okay, yeah, it's a can of worms, isn't it? Because it seems like there is it seems like people really want to make boxes. Yeah, slam poets,
Yeah.
published poets, page poets,
Yeah.
what have you.
Yeah.
And I think what's
Yeah.
interesting, right, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but Carrie and somebody else are bringing forward this anthology of slam poetry. I want to say that's in the
Yes.
pipeline. Yeah, and that's a
Yes.
publication, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like not that long ago, we had a book come out called Solid Air, which was like a publication of slam poets. And I don't know. So my feeling is that everything I do is poetry, whether it's like published online or in a journal or in a book, or it's performed on stage. And although like I make choices about my readings, what I do at them, and I made a choice to enter a slam. And I don't know, like a slam to me is a poetry reading with rules and I guess expectations. And like I don't know, I like performing. So when I saw the slam advert start up last year, I was like, that just seems to me like a chance to perform. And like, why not? I'm gonna go for it. And I went to the Christchurch heats and I got knocked out in the first round. So like, just because like this is, I think like I guess maybe people want to like they want it tyrants and fascists want to enforce a hierarchy of what is poetry and what is not poetry. But let's just be honest, there is good and bad poetry, and it exists across all of the mediums of performance and page and publication. Like it's all there. So yeah, I I just went along and I was like, cool, yeah, I'm gonna do the slam. Oh, I'm out in the first round. But then because there were only 10 of us at the heats, we all got into the final. And then I went to the finals. I won the finals. I got I got 5 10s in the last round. Although Doc Drumheller was very took me aside and said, look, it wasn't a perfect score because actually you went a little bit over time. And like that felt really good. Like doing the slam in my hometown to my people with so many friends in the room with a poem that I feel like strongly about as a political animal, like politically, felt good. Like I was like, I'm here waving my little flag, and my flag is fuck double cab utes, and I'm just gonna go for it. And then so going up to Auckland, it was a different kettle of fish when you're slamming to mostly strangers, and I had a good time, and it was an interesting experience. And I met some awesome people, so I'm very grateful for that experience.
Mm.
But like we can't lie, like it's not the same as like reading a book of poetry, they're just different experiences. And different things are going to fly, when you're in a live space, you want readers who invigorate you and like get you fired up. And slams naturally have a kind of narrative to them because of the rounds and the rises and falls. And so, like, when I was at that Auckland in the Auckland final, and we were drawing our names from the hat to figure out the order, like when I didn't get first in the first round, I was like, poof, thank goodness, because we know score creep is real. But then when I got first in the second round, I was like, rip, this like
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm weighing up all that I know about slams, and I see my chance of getting to the third round is very unlikely. So hey, what are you gonna do, yeah. But it didn't it still felt worthwhile. It still felt like a good time, and a great crowd, like when I was up on that stage in Auckland, even though it was so hot in their room, I was like, these
so
people
hot.
these people love poetry, and they're here and they're listening.
Yeah. I was loving it. I was screaming. I was a little bit delirious. A lot was going on that night. It was a lot. But I loved the poem. I remember, was the first round Ode to the Mons Pubis?
Ode to Mons Pubis, yeah.
I talked about that for days. My friends are like, "Can you shut up about that poem?"
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, you have a bit
Really
of a theme
enjoyed
with your favorites, but
Look, I've been dragged through the mud. When you come in my house, I have a lot of quite like Ionic art, and it's not even intentional, but thank you. But one time a friend came over and she's like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "It's a guava." She's like, "No, it's not. No, it's not." She's like, "What about over here?" And I'm like, "Okay, like fair. That is actually a vulva." And she's like, what is this? What is going on?" And I was like, "Ah."
if the shoe fits, if the guava's there.
Exactly.
I've actually been getting a lot of like, I show people this cover of this book, and they're like, "Dick." I'm like, well, actually, what's more interesting to me is the snake having a big chomp. But like, yeah, I guess there's a dick on there too. Yeah,
Exactly.
we're all into different things.
All right. Do you want to share a poem with us? It's in Biter? It's from Biter?
Yeah, I'll do them from Biter. Do you have any like requests?
No, I really want you to choose this one. I like to know, like, when given the opportunity to round off a podcast with a poem, what poem the poet chooses.
Okay, well, I think I'm gonna go for this one, because it's for my friends.
Do you want to do a
This
little
poem,
preamble, or do you want to? Yes.
this is another one of the sort of like earlier, older poems in this book. It's called Gin Sonnet, and it's in memory of like a very strange youth. Cool. Gin Sonnet. We threw a playhouse in the pool, took off our clothes for extracurricular fun. This unstoppable December, such luck. Each trage kid with a holiday season birthday in full revolt. And the Bombay, so cold in the mouth, like oil on ice, swimming down to the tiny plastic door. Suburban summer, tangle of murmurs. I remember the bathtub, but not the bath. Just a great pounding in my head, walking the block home wrapped in a sad towel. And the party would have gone unnoticed if not for the word cunnilingus etched onto the garden path in pale pink chalk.